Okay, so today we are going to talk about Samatha and Vipashyana, especially in the Vajrayana tradition. He said Tibetan, but is equally Nepalese. I am a Nepalese, so it's equally Nepalese tradition. In fact, it went from Nepal and India into Tibet around the 9th, 10th, 11th century, 12th, until Buddhism was destroyed in the Indian subcontinent by Islamic invasion. And Samatha, in Sanskrit, the definition of Samatha in both the Sanskrit literature and the Pali literature is Sama is like the closest etymological English word is same. Sama is quiet, same, the mind remains the same continuously, and Tha is a shortening of Stha, which again is very close to the English word stay. So the mind remains the same, stays the same continuously for a long period of time. And there are many kinds of samatha meditation. And when we talk about meditation, meditation is very popular nowadays in the modern world, especially because it has become popular in the West. So it has become, it's like a kind of ball bouncing back from the East. It comes to the West and bounces back into the East again. So because it became popular in the West, it started becoming popular again in the East. And there are infinite types of meditation. And the Buddhist Abhidharmic classification of the meditation, there are two types, Samatha and Vipashyana. And Samatha is common to all systems, all mystical systems, Christianity, Sufism, you name it. All systems have one form or the other of Samatha. Buddhism itself has many kinds of Samatha, but they were derived basically from systems that were already existing in the Indian subcontinent at the time of the Buddha. And Buddha just picked them up. So you have, for example, the classical Buddhist meditation, you have discs of different colors, yellow, red, white, green, not green, yellow, white, red, blue, and earth element, water element, fire element, and wind element. These 8, then the breath, then light, and the mind itself. These are taken as objects of meditation. The Sanskrit word is alambana. Alambana means something that you hold on to, something the mind holds on to. So discs, like yellow discs, are made about one span and 4 finger of the person, circular, and kept about a distance from where he sits, and he keeps his mind on it. And if it's yellow, he keeps saying yellow, 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 and closes his eyes and tries to see the yellow disc. And again, yellow, 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 try to see the yellow disc until he can see the disc, he or she can see. I keep saying he, it means both he and she, okay? So he can see the disc clearly in the mind's eye. And then he stops that and he doesn't look at the disc out there, and then focuses the mind on the disc there in the mind and extends the time period when the mind does not move out of the disc and thinks of something else. So gradually there are, like in the classical Buddhist text, 9 levels of what could be called mind stages. And in the 9th level, you are very near to what is called Samadhi. Samadhi, and bliss arises, and breathing changes, and the disc also begins to change. It comes closer inward and changes. It becomes brighter, more like a sparkling diamond, a yellow diamond or something like that. And finally, the person reaches into Samadhi. But within the Buddhist tradition, there are 4 levels of Samadhi. The first is called the first dhyana, and then you go deeper, it's a second dhyana. then you go deeper, then it's the third dhyana, and then you go even deeper, and that's the fourth dhyana. Now this kind of classification of samadhi is not found within other systems. Hinduism also speaks of samadhi, but is not classified into this detailed category. Then there is what is called formless samadhis. And again the word samadhi comes from the same root. Sama means same, quiet, peaceful, remaining the same, and dhi means mind, mind. And when the disc is dropped and there is only the mind, or only infinite space, and then even the infinite space is dropped and there's only the mind, then even that mind is dropped, then there's neither knowing nor not knowing, and so on, like four more stages, what is called formless samadhi. Hindus seem to specialize in these formless samadhis, and you can use any object. I just gave an example of a yellow disc, and classically there are blue, white, red, and then there's like earth element. So you take a red mud and paste it around, make a circular disc out of it, or water element in a bowl of water with no color. I mean, you take a glass or something, a round bowl, and put water, and then water, until the same thing happens. And you go through the stages. And breathing, the same thing. Nowadays in the West, and also because of the Theravada tradition's emphasis on the breathing meditation, it has become very popular, but it is a very fine object of focus. And so the Buddha himself has said it is actually for advanced people. It's not easy, because there's very little something to catch by the mind compared to the yellow disc or a red disc. And breathing, again, in all the Buddhist traditions, there are two main traditions. One is here in the nose, and one is here in the belly, where the breathing comes out, in, out, in. In the Zen tradition, especially the Soto Zen tradition, they emphasize on breathing here and watching the breath go out and in, keep the mind. But the stages are the same. You go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into samadhi. In other traditions, like the Theravada tradition, they emphasize on the breath coming out and in of the nose. So if you have a long nose, then it's more inside here. If you have a short nose, then it's down here, where you feel the breath coming in and out. But these are, as you can see, compared to what the example I just gave of a yellow disc, very subtle. So an average man, it is a very difficult object to meditate on. But it has become very famous nowadays, because the Theravada tradition, they has kind of pushed it to the last 100 years all over the West. But the Buddha himself has said very clearly that's a very difficult object of meditation. And through the breathing also, you go through the same stages, and into the first dhyana, the second dhyana, the third dhyana, and the fourth dhyana. And using the mind as well, you can do the same thing. So, likewise, in the Hindu tradition, there are many infinite forms of Samatha meditations. You might have heard of it, some of you might have even been initiated into them, like this internal sound that goes inside, and you listen to it, and there's and then there are stages to it, like you hear bumbling bees, and then thunderstorm type of sound, and so on. There are many degrees to it. Or sometimes light here. There's light here in some initiation of some system. Then you can press the eye, then you can see a spark here. Then you keep the mind there, and then you go into samadhi. But usually, I found in my own experience with the Hindu system and other systems and Buddhism. Buddhism is much more systematic, you know, and each step is defined, and as you practice, you know which step you are in. And the other systems, you just focus your mind on the sound in here, you light in here or whatever, and you hope one day you reach Samadhi. You keep on practicing, and one day, out of 100 people, one person might achieve Samadhi. So that is Samatha. A simple, very simple talk. That is Samatha. And if you understand what Samatha is, then you can easily understand that all the world's systems of meditations are variations of Samatha. You can use mantra, you know, just repeat the mantra again and again and again and again. The mind gets absorbed deeper into it. That is Samatha, you know. Or you can use one word, any word, you know, and keep focus on it until the mind becomes absorbed and you go into Samadhi. That is Samatha. So even Christianity, the ancient Christian mystics practice on the presence of Christ, you know. That is Samatha. You practice and practice until your mind gets absorbed in feeling the presence of Christ continuously. That is Samatha. So now in Buddhism, with Samatha, any kind, your emotions become subtler and subtler and subtler, and they go latent. But you are not free from your emotional defilements. It's called klesha in Sanskrit. Often translated in English as emotional defilement. You are not free from it, they become latent. So a yogi who has practiced 15, 20, 30, 40 years of Samadhi, it's okay. It took you into Samadhi. So, who has practiced 15, 20 years of Samadhi, his mind is very peaceful. And the energy, the aura that he sends out is also very peaceful. If you went in front of a yogi who's been practicing Samadhi for umpteen years, you feel very peaceful. You know? But in Buddhism, that is not enlightenment. You do not become enlightened no matter how many 100 years you remain in Samadhi. Because the emotional defilements have only become latent, and the mind is very peaceful and relaxed. And the moment causes and conditions arise, the emotional defilements can come out. Right? For example, one ancient famous Buddhist master called Sarapa, in Tibetan Sarapa, in Sanskrit Sarapada, told his wife, make me a carrot cake, you know, and then went into Samadhi. And he went for 12 hours into Samadhi. And when he came down from Samadhi, the first thing he asked his wife is, where's my carrot cake? You know? So 12 hours of deep Samadhi, hadn't taken his carrot cake. Then the question comes to, what is Buddhist enlightenment? I mean, what makes you enlightened in the Buddhist system? And that is Vipashyana. You know? I'm sure all of you have heard of the word, and in the Pali language of the Theravada tradition, it is Vipassana. And in Sanskrit, it is Vipashyana, is S-H-Y, Shya, you know, Vipashyana. And in Tibetan, it is called Lathong, you know, which is a translation of Vipassana. And again, the definition in the Abhidharmic system of both the Theravada tradition and the Mahayana tradition, V comes from two words. Visheshena means special, and Vividena means holistic, and Pashyana means seeing. So, seeing specially or holistically, right, is the meaning of Vipassana. And that is in the Pali tradition as well, and in the Mahayana tradition as well. You know, seeing directly, specially. Then the English word that has been used for it, insight. Sight is correct, Pashyana, but in does not give the meaning of holistic or special. You know, it's just insight, meditation, which is the most popular English word for Vipassana. And this is what happens when translations happen, you know, in the Western languages. A lot of the deeper meanings of the words are kind of lost. In Tibet, they made it sure that that is not lost. So they invited Indian scholars and yogis, and hundreds of Tibetan yogis and scholars sat together and made a dictionary, and word by word they created a new word which was not in the Tibetan language. You know, for every Sanskrit word, like Vipashyana, Vi means luck, and Pashyana means thong. Thong means seeing in Tibetan as well. You know, in the same way they created every single Tibetan word was created. That's why an average Tibetan doesn't understand those words. You know, when a Tibetan scholar, a Khenpo, is giving a teaching and he uses all these technical words, an average Tibetan doesn't understand it automatically, even though he's speaking Tibetan. You know. So, but unfortunately, in the English language, there is no such creation. Every writer can use his own word. You know. Like awareness, for example, is very popular, but what do you mean by awareness? You know, what exactly is meant by awareness? And what is he translating from the Sanskrit or the Pali? That's not very clear. So, Vipassana is seeing things as they really are. You know, seeing the world and yourself as you really are, as the world really is. Yeah. So, the type of meditation that allows you to gradually gain insight into how the world really exists and how I, or this body, or what I call I, really exist, is Vipassana. And only when you penetrate through that, then, according to Buddhism, you can achieve enlightenment. You know? So again, enlightenment has become a very common word in the English language, and it's not defined. You know, the Hindus also use the word enlightenment, the Sufis also use the word enlightenment, but it's not defined. What do you mean by enlightenment? In Buddhism, jnana is defined very clearly. And what the Buddhists call jnana is not what the Hindus call jnana. Because the Hindus, in the Hindu system, basically, even if you do something close to Vipassana, it is like in search of who am I? You know, who am I? And when I realize the self, the capital self, I become enlightened. But in the Buddhist sense, the question, who am I, is not applicable. The question, if you have to ask that question, is what am I? Not who am I, you know? And when I find out what I am, I find there is no I. No? There is no self. There is no Atma. So Atma is the Hindu word for self. It is the capital self, capital S. And the Buddhist word is Anatma. And Pali is Anatta. You know, Anatta means no self. And this is again a huge paradigm shift in the Buddhist system from all other systems. Because our language, the way we think, the way we are conditioned to think, everything seems to imply that there is an I here. And there must be some kind of an I. Maybe not an outer eye. If not an outer eye, there must be an inner eye. Right? And language says, I see you. No, there is an I and a you there. And we just take it, assume that that's real. That's how it is. And because I grew up in this language, I begin to experience it that way. So it becomes part of my experience. I really feel I am I, there is an I here, and that sees you. And there is a you really out there. Right? And that is what Buddhism challenges. And that is where Buddhism becomes very difficult. Because we have to use language to communicate. We have no choice. You know? But Buddhism is going against the grain of everything that language implies. everything that language implies. We say table, we believe there is a table. And because everybody says table, we use the same word, then we have a kind of a tendency inside here to solidify it as a table, and it exists. And Buddhism says it doesn't exist. Not really it doesn't exist, but it doesn't exist the way you think it exists. And I don't exist, at least not the way I think I exist, or the way I feel inside here. So the world out there that I experience doesn't exist the way I experience it. There's even nuclear physics accepts that. There is no world out there the way we experience it. In nuclear physics, there are only energy patterns, and the mind makes that world out there. And Buddhism would agree to that to some extent. That the mind creates that based on karma, creates the world out there. But there is no real world out there. Now this is something very difficult for an average man to digest. What do you mean? I'm experiencing the world out there. What do you mean there's no world out there? But again, we get trapped into words. Out there, in here, here, there. These are all relative words. For example, Cool here says, I'm here, right? But that's a place, here. And he feels like there is a here where I am. But I call it there. And so now the question arises, is that a here or a there? So this is how words create, solidify our experience. And then we cling on, hold on to it, we grasp on to it. And that is what is called ignorance, avidya, in Buddhism, nescience. We have a tendency within us to solidify or see existence in things that do not really exist the way we experience them, and then cling on to it. And the Sanskrit word for ignorance or nescience is sahaja atma graha. Sahaja means innate. Atma, I think all of you know the word by now. It's a very common word, especially in Hinduism. It's a super self, internal self, or super self, over self, or whatever, Atma, self. But in Buddhism, it's used slightly differently. It means a real existing thing, whether it's out there or in here. So sahaja means innate, Atma means self-existence, graha means grasping. So in English, it is often translated into grasping to the concept of a really existing self. A really existing self here, and when I say that the table exists, I give it a self, a real existence. And Vipashyana is about seeing through that. Seeing that that is not how the table really exists. That is not how I really exist. And that's the special seeing.